Okay then, so now it's at the seconder, so open up the debate on the amendment. Is there anybody? Councillor Concord.
Thank you very much. I think the amendment is obviously nice, thanking someone for actually putting forward a policy that's been campaigned for many years, but there are some risks and some things that need sorting out, because obviously if we go through this process and change the laws so Section 21 evictions can't take place, there's a massive risk there'll be a massive spike in Section 21 evictions just before the change takes place, which will put a massive strain on this council. So I think if we are writing to the Minister thanking him for making the change, I think we do also need to ask that safeguards are put in place so that there's no pre-change of law evictions. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, Councillor Concord doesn't have much experience in this area of dealing with court procedures and how laws change, because you cannot legislate to stop someone issuing a case in the county court. You just can't do that. It's common sense, you can't do that. Unfortunately, whatever happens, whenever there is a change in the law, whether it be fees, whether it be a change in a procedural, solicitors, landlords, whoever, will always try and buck the system and issue a number of cases before the change in the procedure rules comes about. There's no two ways about that. It happens. I've been through it a number of times. I've issued my fair share of these cases in the past, and I know what they mean to the people. You will not stop the evictions beforehand, before the law is hopefully changed, but I think this is a step in the right direction. That is listening to people who have experienced difficulties. Section 21 wasn't designed to punish people, it was designed to enable people legitimately to get their property back if they needed it back, not to punish people through no-fault evictions. There has been an abuse of the process, and I think that is commonly understood and acknowledged. So what we are doing is basically asking in the amendment, taking on board everything that you have said, but also add that extra step of positive action so that this council will formally respond to the consultation and welcomes the fact that the government has actually done this, because it just says we agree with it, with the aims of the consultation, but the motion as written and as proposed by Councillor Phillips doesn't actually take a positive step to act on our views. So I think our motion just actually gives the original proposal a little bit of oomph, and I don't see why anyone should vote against it tonight. I think it's quite common sense and isn't actually that political, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be voting for this amendment this evening, and the reason is quite simple, because all the amendment is saying this council responds to the recent consultation announced by the Secretary of State. Our original motion, the motion moved by Councillor Phillips, said we would respond to the recent consultation, stating our complete opposition. That is not in the amendment, Mr. Mayor. We welcome this consultation. Well, Mr. Mayor, it clearly isn't in the handwritten note from Councillor Golby. Perhaps the mover of the amendment would like to make very clear what they are moving today.
Point of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was quite clear, and I've said it and Councillor Golby said it, that it is, the proposal is as you see it on the sheet, you have the handwritten note, and then it keeps in the typed note which you have proposed tonight. It is both sections. I don't see how that is unclear. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Golby said that in her opening statement. It was accepted by the officers when they asked for clarification. That is the motion. If Councillor Jackson's just trying to find some wiggle room to get off the hook because she doesn't like the fact that we're actually agreeing with her and doesn't want to have unanimity and wants to play politics, that's fair enough. But actually, let's call it for what it is. Please read the motion in its entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know I didn't get the chance to speak on the motion and I've kept politics out of it. I can't support the amendment because I can't thank, in a way, this government for doing something that they should have done a long time ago. This was in Miliband's manifesto in 2015. 2013 was it? Anyway, so I can't support it. I'm not going to say thank James Brokenshaw for doing his job.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely support the intentions of Councillor Golby here. I think also the motion as amended with the additions of Councillor Golby to the motion as moved by Councillor Phillips, I think it was, apologies if it was somebody else, makes clear that actually that we welcome the government's consultation on this, and that very clear it states that we thank them for looking at this and proposing that we end it. So it's quite a simple motion, and I think it's quite a motion that we could all get on board with. But Mr. Mayor, I beg that we move to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. The amendment to the motion, in my opinion, Mr. Mayor, is...
Councillor Hancock, can you just give me a minute? Okay, so you're saying move to the vote. Does that find a seconder? Yeah. Okay, we'll move to the vote on
No,
the...
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, if that's going to be your decision, I'm going to challenge it. I heard it moved, there was nobody seconding it, I started to speak. I don't think you should be able to go back to something after you've already allowed something else. It's in your hands, Mr. Mayor, and always, I respect your decision. Thank you.
Okay then. Well, what we'll do is we'll allow Councillor Hancock to have his speech, and then move on. So Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a speech, it'll be very brief. But Mr. Mayor, as I started to say, the amendment to the motion moved from this side of the chamber. In my opinion, Mr. Mayor, that's over-egging the motion that's been put forward. The motion, that motion which is concise and achieves the objectives of the wording of that motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Okay then, so now we'll vote to move to the vote. So all those in favour of moving to the vote? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay then, so move to the vote then. So now we're going to move to the vote on the amendment. So all those in favour? Against? Abstain? Abstain. Okay then, so that's lost, and so now we move on to the motion. Substantive motion. So, okay, do you wish to speak on that, Councillor Phillips?
I do. We finally got round to it. The Prime Minister, Mr. Mayor, said recently that millions of responsible tenants could still be uprooted by their landlords with little notice or justification. She says, this is wrong today and we are acting by preventing these unfair evictions. The government, quite rightly, will consult on abolishing Section 21 no-fault notices in England, meaning private landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants from their homes at short notice, without, and here is the fair point, without good reason. Mr. Mayor, to back up the Prime Minister's quote, the government said Section 21, which is hard to challenge, had become one of the leading causes of family homelessness. In fact, Mr Mayor, I was helping a young working couple who rented a room out in a house who were issued a couple of weeks ago with a Section 21. Luckily, we were able to find them somewhere else. Again, privately, because the council wouldn't be able to help them until they'd actually been pushed out of the door. There was another instance whereby I know a tenant who is so scared to complain about the condition of her home that they refused our help to start with, when I asked the council to visit because they were scared of being turned out. That landlord came and visited, and still the work promised a year ago has not been done. So that will now include another visit and me actually talking to this vulnerable person to try and encourage her to let the council in. The landlord said he would do all the work, or they would do all the work, but who knows what conversations went on between the landlord and the tenant after we had called round. But like I said, a year on, the work has not been done. Mr Mayor, the CAB Chief, Executive Gillian Guy, says the change was a groundbreaking shake-up and will prevent landlords from evicting tenants for simply complaining. The most recent research by CAB suggested that tenants who made a formal complaint about their landlord or the state of their rented home have a 46% chance of being issued with a Section 21 eviction notice in the following 6 months. Heather Kennedy, a housing organiser at the think tank New Economics Foundation, said that she had experienced 2 no-fault evictions, including last winter, just after finding out she was pregnant. She said, "I know how brutal and terrifying no-fault evictions are. It is impossible to build a stable, rooted life as a private tender under laws like Section 21. Mr Mayor, obviously landlords, of which the majority are good, need changes too, i.e. to speed up the court process for eviction. I often wonder though why some landlords do not bother about antisocial behaviour by their tenants but just keep taking the money. But at least the government at long last recognise the need to act Section 21. But those who do not tackle antisocial behaviours and arrears issues need quicker court action. I recognise it's a two-way street. Because you never know, Mr Mayor, when it might happen to a friend, a family colleague, a family member, a work colleague, and as the government said, it has become one of the leading causes of homelessness. So, I support the motion. Section 21 needs to go. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I was truly astonished that following on my submission of the question that I put forward tonight, that the government made such a quick response. Can't fault them for it, Mr Mayor. They must have heard that was coming. But I've heard something tonight, Mr Mayor. The Tories opposite accusing us of playing politics, when their amendment was quite clearly aimed at that political game. There is no need, Mr Mayor, to play politics with something like this, and to praise their masters in London over something that should have been done is not right. Personally, Mr Mayor, I don't care what the colour of the government is. When things are wrong, they should be put right. Mr Mayor, our motion and the consultation by the government, if they take on board the comments that we will be making, and I'm sure lots of others will be making, as has been pointed out by Councillor Phillips, will be a good thing. But there are lots of other issues around it, Mr Mayor. There are other ways that landlords, if they want to be difficult, can be. We've got to be careful that they don't use something in the way of just hiking up the rents, to achieve the same thing of getting people out earlier. Now, to force tenants out like that clearly would be wrong. Now let's be absolutely clear, Mr Mayor, not all tenants are bad. As most things in life, it's a few people that do bad things, it's not everybody. But those rogue landlords out there that do this type of thing need to be, that's not me really, I know, been sorted out and dealt with. Apologies, Mr Mayor, I lost my track because of the head timer going up. So they're not...
Councillor Cox, that is the time on this motion.
What? 5 minutes? Oh, for the motion. I'll put this in writing to you then, Mr Mayor, probably.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Trevor, Councillor Golby, if you could do the same. Okay. And move to okay. Okay, then let's move to the vote on that then. So,
All for a recorded vote, Mr Mayor.
okay.
If you could indicate for or against the substantive motion, please. Councillor Beaumont.
For.
Councillor Brindley Edwards. For. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gazane.
For.
Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Gutteridge.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacourt. Councillor Llewellyn Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor London. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Wilson.
Okay, that's carried then. Right then, moving on with the questions from members. I'd like to invite Councillor Glass to ask his question, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Would the leader use her position within the combined authority whilst at the same time write to the Tory leader of the County Council asking for her support to argue for an enhanced West Midlands travel pass, which would be a great assistance not only to the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth, but a cheap and seamless travel card for all within the combined authority?
Thank you, Councillor Glass. Councillor Jackson, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Glass for his question? I am more than happy to write to the leader of Warwickshire County Council to ask that she argue for an extension to the West Midlands travel pass that would benefit the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Why do we see such price differences? Today, my internet research tells me that if I travel by bus from Bedworth to Nuneaton and back, it will cost me £8.20. And yet, a day rider ticket for Coventry is £3.90, which I can use several times a day. Why, I ask, is this? Further, at a recent meeting of the West Midlands Combined Authorities, those women most affected by government changes to pension age were granted concessions on public transport. Is it not right that we here in our borough deserve exactly the same? I could go on, Mr Mayor, but conclude by saying I will happily write to the leader of Warwickshire County Council arguing for better fares for residents.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, can I move a motion, please? In light of the answer, in In light of the answer from the Leader of the Council, Mr Mayor, can I move the following motion? That this Council asks Warwickshire County Council to become a full member of the West Midlands Transport Authority excuse me, to ensure residents of this borough can fully benefit from the opportunities enjoyed by our neighbours across the border in better and cheaper public transport. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Does that phone seconder?
I second that motion. And can I speak to the motion now?
Yeah, that's great.
So, my first full-time job was 10 miles away from where I lived, and I didn't have a car. That was okay because I lived in Coventry. There was a great bus network, buses were regular and affordable. It was actually a pleasant experience travelling to and from work on the bus, believe it or not. You had the same people at the bus stop in the morning. You got to know neighbours that you wouldn't have spoken to otherwise. We'd often sit and chat all the way to work, spanning the generation divide and developing good strong networks that you could call on if the need arose. After work, there was a relaxing half-hour journey home when you could talk over the stresses of the day, have a laugh and unwind before arriving home refreshed and ready to enjoy your evening. Very different from today's commute to and from work for most of us.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Elliott, can you just... Councillor Tromans, point of order.
Charming reminiscences, nothing to do with the motion at hand. Can we confine to the motion?
Thank Councillor Tromans. Councillor Elliott, can you stick to the motion, please?
I'm talking about bus travel. So, travelling by bus back then, very different experience to what it is for most of us now in the rush hour, which is anything but a relaxing and sociable experience. And if I needed a bit of time to myself, I'd just pull out my Sony Walkman and put on that, now that's what they call Music Volume 1 cassette. And in the evenings, many of us would make another bus trip into town to go and see a film or go for a meal without worrying about who the designated driver was. Good times. Bus travel in Coventry was like mental health therapy. It was good for the soul. Times have moved on, but bus travel can still be a pleasant experience today, with buses boasting leather seats and free Wi-Fi. But it is too expensive and infrequent here in North Warwickshire to be a real alternative to getting in the car. Indeed, I had a nasty shock when I moved to Nuneaton in the late 1980s, when there was literally only one bus a day into town from where I lived on the Poplar Farm estate, and the cost of that journey was eye-watering. I didn't have the luxury of being able to afford a car in those days, so found myself pretty much stranded until I was able to join the other 3 or 4 car families in Nuneaton. Everybody seems to have 3 or 4 cars per family these days, clogging up the road and adding to congestion.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tromans, which point of order? Point out the point of order.
It needs to stick to the...
No, Councillor Tromans, point out the point of order. I'm not having keep standing up saying point of order when it actually ain't a point of order. Show me in the Constitution which point of order, where the point of order is.
It is 41068. A. 41068.
Hold on, I'll check 41068.
You're talking to the motion. It's too expensive.
Mr Mayor, while you're considering that, should we say further reminiscences?
No, sit down, Councillor Tromans. Stop keep standing up. I've told you time and time again, every meeting we have, you jump up and say something. Please sit down until you spoke to all of you. I'm not just pointing at you, I'm on about everybody. Just stand up, say what they want when they want. That is not how this is going to go on. This is my last full council because they're having the changeover before the next one. Brilliant. Right, okay, I've checked out 4610A or whatever it is, and it's down to my discretion, and I think that Councillor Elliott is talking to the motion. She's on about the experiences of travel, affordable travel. So, Councillor Elliott, can you please carry on with your...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a ward councillor, one of the most frequent concerns of residents is about congestion around schools and even difficulties parking near to their own homes. There are just too many cars on the roads, and we have become far too reliant on our cars here in Nuneaton and Bedworth. It's not good for our mental health, and it's not good for our physical health either. In the West Midlands, there is a scheme at the moment where drivers are being paid up to £3,000 to ditch their cars and travel by alternative means. This is fully supported by the Tory Mayor, Andy Street, by the way. So, for the sake of our mental health, good community cohesion and improved physical health, let's be part of that. Let families go back to having 1 or 2 cars, not 3 or 4. Let our kids have the freedom to save for deposits on their first homes, not for deposits on their first car.
Your time is up now. So, sorry about that. Sorry about all the interruptions. But,
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Conical.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm really keen on this motion. It is a real good idea to get us integrated into the West Midlands travel cards and tickets. For a point of information, the return fare from Bedworth to Nuneaton is £6.10 on the bus. What you found on the website with a daily travel card or that sort of price. And of course, the whole system is crazy, and I understand why you thought it was £8. Because if you don't know how to use all these websites, you get a misleading fare. And this is why we need to be in the same travel zone, same travel card pattern as the West Midlands. And it is really important we do so, because Stagecoach in particular rip people off. And at the moment, it is cheap to go from Bedworth to Coventry because there's competition, and it's cheap to go from Nuneaton to Leicester. And in fact, a travel card to Leicester after the next fare changes will be cheaper than a travel card from Nuneaton to Bedworth. Because of the boundary at the Cliff Island, and because there's competition, the whole system is rotten, and it's cheaper for me to go shopping in Leicester than it is in Bedworth. Crazy world. So I fully support this. We need to get integrated transport. We have got climate change emergency. We do what we want. We can. We have just one car and cycle a lot, but I think that public transport is an absolute key. And buses carry 3/4 of the people on public transport. When they talk about public transport, people always, in London, this bubble, always talk about trains. But actually the vast majority of buses, public transport journeys, are on buses. And buses are the way we're going to solve a lot of these climate change problems. Getting people on the buses. And that involves them being as easy as possible to travel on and not having this boundary between Coventry and Bedworth, where suddenly you've got totally different ticketing, totally different arrangements. So I fully support this, and it's great that the Labour group have gone on board with something I've been campaigning about for a decade or so. And yeah, it is so good, because we need to get people talking about public transport. And it does, if it's cheap, save people money, give people flexibility, and importantly, give people in Nuneaton who are young without a car an opportunity to work in Coventry. So many Green Party young members have left Nuneaton to live in Coventry or Leicester because they get this public transport. And being green, a lot of them don't have cars. So actually, yeah, I don't expect anyone else to cycle to Coventry, but I do want it to be easy to go on bus. So I fully support this. And please do hassle Stagecoach as well, because they are the most unreasonable organisation. In addition to Bedworth, Ganny Common is outside the Nuneaton Fair Zone. Absolutely mad.
Thank you, Councillor Conical. Councillor Evans.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I do sympathise with a lot of the comments which have been made by members of the Labour group, and of course Councillor Conical himself. I used to use the buses quite a lot before I got a car. The fares, bus fares across Nuneaton and Bedworth are extortionate for Stagecoach. Although I would say to members, if members of the public ever ask, I would encourage you to tell them to actually use the Arriva services instead, the 78 and 79, because they are actually far cheaper to use. The 79 service now goes from Kersley to Nuneaton, or Prologis Park to Nuneaton. So I do sympathise with a lot of the things that have been said by members across the chamber. I was kind of hoping that the person who would propose this motion, so Councillor Tandy, would have said in her opening remarks whether this is possible, because when I first looked into this, when I first became interested in public transport, about why the fares in the Neaton and Bedworth are so extortionate and so mixed, it was because obviously Coventry and Birmingham subsidise the West Midlands Transport Authority quite a lot. But when I was looking into it, I was under the understanding that district or borough councils and district councils in Warwickshire and Warwickshire County Council itself can actually become a member of the West Midlands Transport Authority. So on this basis, in principle, I mean, I do sympathise with a lot of the things that Labour members have said, but I don't think I'll be able to. I'll have to abstain on this because I don't actually, without that clarification, I don't believe that Warwickshire can actually be a member of the West Midlands Transport Authority.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
So which point of order is it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I beg to move a suspension of the standing order 410.6c, which would allow us to continue the question time session to continue this debate and hear from all kind of questions. And that is a proposed.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor. The agenda isn't exactly heavy.
Well, we'll have to vote on that then because it's been proposed, it's been seconded, but I did say at the beginning that we'd run out of questions, run out of time for questions. So, well, we're going to have to vote on to extend the time for questions, but I am prepared to finish this question off, but I'm
This is a recorded vote to suspend contract council procedure rules. Which reference is it?
It's paragraph 410.6.
This is for or against suspending council procedure rules. Indicate for or against, please. Councillor Beaumont.
Against.
Councillor Brindley Edwards. For. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
for.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gavane.
For.
Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Graham. For. Councillor Gutteridge.
For.
Councillor Hancocks.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacall.
For.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Longden.
Against.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Pomfret.
Against.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley.
For.
Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
So I'll use my casting vote for against that. So that falls.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, could I just add, it's a simple question. How many minutes have we got left on the clock for the 45 minutes?
We're out. Right, so Councillor Evans, have you finished your yeah, so you're finished. So Councillor Jackson, right.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest we move to Can I move a recorded vote?
Right, so that's been moved and seconded So we move to the vote. We're out of time. So recorded vote. And on their discretion, I was going to allow Councillor Evans to finish, but he'd finished. And so now I've just moved to Councillor Jackson, who's moved to vote. To finish the question. We're not moving on to any more questions. When we've just voted on this motion now. We're voting, we're not debating anymore now, we're just voting on it. Well, I can assure you it does matter. Right, so we move it, we're going to vote on that now.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, which point of order is this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a point of order on basis of 410(6)(c) that states that the questions shall not exceed 45 minutes. We have now exceeded the 45 minutes, we've heard the buzzer and the timer has gone off. And therefore, there's no discretion to continue or to allow votes after that time, sir.
And it quite clearly says discretion of the mayor. I am the mayor, last time I looked in the mirror. And so I'm moving to the discretion on the mayor. No, we're finishing this debate. We're voting on this debate. That's it. It's mayor's discretion. That's how it's happening. So, Simone.
Indicate for or against the substantive of the original motion.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure whether we're moving on the vote or whether we're moving on the motion. The vote. On the motion. On the motion.
Just to clarify, for or against the motion, please. Councillor Beaumont.
For.
Councillor Brindley-Edwards.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
Abstain.
Councillor Croft.
Abstain.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
Abstain.
Councillor Kazane.
Abstain to run out of time.
Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Goldie.
I'm abstaining because Councillor Jackson needs to vote. So she's got to vote on procedural motion of moving to the vote. I haven't done that. So I'm abstaining.
So if the next stage in the proceeding vote is to move to take the vote, so that's the proceeding motion to move to vote.
We're voting on the motion, this motion.
So Councillor Goldie. Councillor Graham.
Abstain.
Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longden. Councillor Pandera. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley.
Out of time, refuse to vote.
Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Okay, so that motion's carried. So all the rest of the questions now will be answered within the next 7 days, or 7 working days. And we'll carry on with business. Special urgency decisions, there is none. Now on to number 10, Cabinet. Report by the Leader of the Council is attached. I invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor Julie Jackson, to present her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present this report. I think item 2.2 is particularly important to draw attention to, that the Council has been successful in gaining a High Court injunction in regard to unauthorised traveller encampments. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, I and my colleagues are more than happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any member wish to speak? Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question to the portfolio holder for planning and development with regards to the cabinet meeting last week. Item 7, statement of common ground with the Woodlands Action Group. It appears the planning department did not inform the Woodlands Action Group that the item was actually on the agenda, despite the item being about the group.
Order, Mr. Mayor.
Can you point out which point of order it is, please?
I've introduced the Cabinet report to Council that covers the 13th of March meeting, Mr. Mayor, only. I think Councillor Evans is referring to other meetings that have taken place.
Okay, Councillor Evans, so you got that, yeah? Okay.
I thought I'd give it a go. It was very simple. It was literally a yes or no, but you know.
Oh, you give it a go, alright. Councillor Condicle.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, sorry.
So I had 2 questions.
Oh, right, okay.
My second question, the leader lists a number of funds on the final page from the West Midlands Combined Authority. Can I ask the leader of the council, has the council applied for any funding through the Combined Authority Brownfield Land and Land Remediation Property Fund?
Councillor Jackson?
Yes.
And Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condicle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions as well. The first one is on delivering our futures, which is 2AI. We've got this report to discuss, but one question I'd like to ask the leader is, why have we not had input from the public in creating this? The document was created and consulted on, but the public didn't actually shape the document, and particularly things like delivering the future, in there, it's all very bland, very wishy-washy, and if you talk to business or talk to environmentalists, they'll have particular asks, and they're not in that delivering our future document. So can I ask why you didn't actually have inputs from people like the environmentalists and the businesses in terms of what our future is?
Councillor Jackson?
Mr. Mayor, I seem to recall actually standing outside at the market stalls in the town centre, consulting on both this year's budget, and I understand the development of this document. If that is incorrect, I'll stand corrected, but I certainly remember spending myself some time with senior officers talking to members of the public in this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's in relation to 2A Part 2 recommendation from the EOSP, and specifically about the High Court injunction which is mentioned in the Cabinet report about gypsy and travellers. Upon reading the order, paragraph 4 of the order gives permission for defendants 1 and 2 to actually set up encampments in our area if there is agreement with, and their extended family, if there is agreement with this council. However, the order is silent on any evidence which is required to prove that the child in question is receiving treatment. Will the leader of the council now undertake to work with officers to clarify that omission from the order when it has its return date back at the High Court, and ask the High Court to amend that order so that evidence is required before any decision is made? That does not interfere with their human rights. It is a standard type of order which is made in many thousands of cases across the country to require disclosure. I don't see why Nuneaton and Bedford should be any different. Will the leader of the council work to ensure that we get that as part of the amended order? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Jackson?
Of course, Mr. Mayor, you would expect me to answer that I will listen very carefully to any legal advice given by senior officers of this council before we return to the High Court at any future date.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Walmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, my question was on the very similar lines of Councillor Wilson, but I just want to press that issue is, will, rather than asking and waiting to receive advice, will she go away and ask the question of legal office, of our officers, to do the review as and to strengthen that particular point, as Councillor Wilson's just alluded to, rather an active going to officers rather than some passive waiting for comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jackson?
Mr. Mayor, I think I very clearly answered the previous question. I could refer Councillor Walmsley to that, but can I just explained to Councillor Walmsley that I meet on a very regular basis with senior officers of this council, as you would rightly expect me to. I listen to their advice. Sometimes I ask them if they will look into issues, and I will continue to act in that manner, as is appropriate of the leader of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Concord.
Thank you very much. My second point is on, or question is on the very end of the West Midlands Combined Authority bit, where it says Housing Land Single Commissioning Framework Update and Key Principles Confidential Report. When do we actually find out what the West Midlands Combined Authority is doing? Because obviously the Land and Housing Single Framework, whatever it is going to be very important. And we have been done over with the borough plan and how it's done stuff, and I don't want all the land stuff and housing stuff to be done secret. So can you explain why it's secret, and when what the West Midlands Combined Authority is doing is going to be made public, please?
Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, I believe very recently I provided a report to all members, or rather officers did on my asking them to, in regard to matters of the West Midlands Combined Authority. I think actually something like a quarterly report to elected members about what is occurring at the West Midlands Combined Authority, I'm more than happy to ask that that sort of a bullet point goes to all members of the council. I think that's a valuable suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I was going to follow up, but obviously Councillor Concord did indicate. But with regards to the West Midlands Combined Authority Brownfield Land and Property Development Fund, could I ask the leader which sites in the borough the council have applied for? I do appreciate that you might not be able to declare that due to commercial sensitivity. If that's the case, then fine. But there is obviously a site in my ward which I'm sure the leader will know about. The brownfield lands owned by the council behind the Cricketers Arms, which I'd like really the council to consider applying funding from the West Midlands Combined Authority towards that, because my constituents do actually want housing, social housing to be built there, and it's a fantastic opportunity for the council.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Jackson.
I'm really pleased to hear that the Conservatives seem to have changed their mind about the value of the West Midlands Combined Authority, as in only in February they decided in their budget that we would withdraw our membership of the West Midlands Combined Authority. So I'm glad to see that they now are changing their minds. In regard to the piece of land in Councillor Evans' ward, I understand the council owns but a very small, little piece of that land. Can I suggest that Councillor Evans meets with appropriate council officers to discuss the matter further?
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Gasang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Back to 2A2, with the High Court injunction, I just wanted to ask a brief question. It says, since the 19th of March, so nearly a month, we've been in talks with the police and the county council to discuss the terms. I'd like to ask if we've got any update on that at all, and also what impact, if any, would this have on privately owned land purchased by travellers? We've got a piece currently between Kingswood and Galley Common that have been purchased apparently by travellers, that we were waiting for something to happen, we've had work carried out. So if that has been purchased by travellers, they decide to move on to it without planning permission, will this speed up the process of evicting them? Thank you.
Councillor Jackson. Thank you, Councillor Gasang. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Gizane, I believe that this order does not apply to private land, but what I will do is ask our Director of Governance and Recreation, maybe a slightly different type, Philip Richardson, to actually provide regular updates to elected members. I think that's the best way forward in this regard. Obviously there are weekly updates, you will appreciate that, but as and when there are updates required, I'm sure that Mr Richardson will keep us fully informed, and we will address your point in regard to private land in the next update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Concord.
Just one final one. On the 5G, which is one paragraph up from the end of the West Midlands Combined Authority, it's talking about structural and governance update about the West Midlands 5G project. I'm very keen we don't miss out and be in this slow lane for this technology. And can I ask, are we involved in that 5G structure and governance, or is it something that we'll have to wait for the clumps to drop off the end of the Leamington and Coventry high-tech superhighway?
Thank you, Councillor Concord. Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, we are hopeful that there will be some 5G benefit to our authority from this. And again, Mr Mayor, I think this is best addressed in that quarterly report update to elected members that I promised in an answer to a previous question.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the quarterly performance report at 3A1, I raised the point at Cabinet that there are some directorates where not even 60% of the employees have received performance reviews. As a manager of staff myself, I find this incredulous to believe, especially when I'm given an answer that staff can opt out of having a performance review. In any form of work, as I understand it, certainly in my organisation where I work, you have no choice over whether you have a performance report, even if it's just to say you are doing fine. Will the leader of the council undertake to work with the senior officers to correct this oversight, because members of the public deserve to know that every single member of this authority's staff is having their performance monitored in the correct way and that poor performance is being dealt with in a robust manner. I'm not satisfied unless all members of staff are having that performance review. We are dealing with that. We need that assurance, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can assure Councillor Wilson that quarterly monitoring performance reports are scrutinised in depth by Cabinet on a regular basis, and issues that we have concerns about are raised appropriately with senior officers.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The question is in relation to the Part 4, which the board on the 22nd of March 2019 covered items that may have a direct impact on the needs and better of the Borough Council. The report doesn't state whether or not we sent anybody, be that officer or be that a representative, to said meeting. Could the leader confirm if we did, and if so, whether it was an officer or an elected representative, please? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, can I assure Councillor Wilmsley that at every meeting of the West Midlands Combined Authority Board itself, both myself and an officer of this council attend. There was one board meeting which I did not attend, which Councillor Phillips attended, I believe so, with an officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Okay, that seems to be all questions on that one, so we'll... Councillor Dolby.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Can I move a motion to suspend Standing Order 4.11.1, please? Do I need to read it out?
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Right, okay, so I've got a motion and I've got a seconder on 4.11.1. and you want some clarification on what 4.11.1 is. So, Phil, could you read that out, please?
So Councillor Golby has moved to suspend council procedure rules 4.11.1, which is regarding motions on notice, which is except for motions which can be moved without notice under Rule 12, written notice of every motion signed by at least 3 councillors must be delivered to the head of public service excuse me, not later than noon, at least 8 working days before the date of the meeting. These will be entered in a book open to public inspection. Councillor Golby is proposing to suspend the council procedure rules and suspend that item in the constitution.
Right, okay then, so we've now going to vote on whether to suspend 4.11.1. Is it a recorded vote, or are we just going for show of hands?
If you could indicate for or against. Councillor Beaumont?
Against.
Councillor Brindley Edwards?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Croft?
For.
Councillor Daffin? Councillor Doherty? Councillor Elliott? Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Kazane?
For.
Councillor Glass?
Against.
Councillor Golby? Councillor Grant?
For.
Councillor Gutteridge?
For.
Councillor Hancox?
Against.
Councillor Hocking? Councillor Jackson?
Against.
Councillor Condacore?
They have to explain why they want it, so I'm abstaining.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash?
For.
Councillor Lloyd?
Against.
Councillor Longden?
Against.
Councillor Pandare?
For.
Councillor Phillips?
Against.
Councillor Pomfret? Councillor Rudkin? Councillor A. Sargent?
For.
Councillor J. Sargent? Councillor J. Shepherd? Councillor T. Shepherd? Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Tandy? Councillor Tromans?
For.
Councillor Walmsley?
For.
Councillor Watkins?
Against.
Councillor Wilson?
For.
Okay, so that's lost. So we'll move on with business, on to number 11 now. Recommendations from Cabinet or other committees delivering our future 2019-31. A report from Cabinet is at page 68 of the agenda. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendation set out on the agenda paper?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to do that. It's an overarching ambition is to aim to achieve the greatest improvement in quality of life in Warwickshire by 2031. This document has 3 aims, each with a number of strategic priorities. The themes and priorities have been developed following consultation with local residents, communities, businesses and partners within the borough. A dedicated workshop has also been provided to which all elected members were invited to attend. The success of delivering our future will be monitored via a performance management framework, which will be regularly reviewed and refreshed during the lifetime of the document. A number of headline performance measures have been included, and in addition to these, localised specific performance indicators will be delivered within departmental action plans, which sit underneath this document, and they will be detailed. Overall progress of these plans will be monitored in accordance with the Council's performance management framework. Mr Mayor, having said those few words, I so move adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move an amendment to the proposal to insert on page 74, underneath theme 3 investment, making the most of what we have, to include a priority 7, heritage. and to insert specifically to promote and celebrate the rich heritage of our borough, including our cultural and industrial achievements. This document, in my view, does lack some finer details and specificity about how it's going to relate to Nuneaton and Bedworth, but I have spoken to officers tonight and they assure me that the supplementary documents which will sit under that will deal with that. But I think we need to rectify a glaring hole in this report, which is the heritage of Nuneaton and Bedworth we should be proud to promote. And I don't see why this should be contentious, because whilst we have to look to the future, we should also, in my view, celebrate the best of our past. We have a number of items across Nuneaton and Bedworth. We have George Eliot, we have Nicholas Chamberlain, we have the rich industrial and coal heritage that we have. And these are elements we can make work for us in trying to transform Nuneaton and Bedworth for the future. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually attend the workshop for councillors, because I was actually, as it happens, in a meeting with Brent, having a scheduled meeting with Brent as Leader of the Opposition with my deputy. All I'm asking for is that we correct this mistake, embrace our heritage, look forward to the future, and actually put this in the document. It should, in my view, gain cross-party support, because it is relatively unpolitical and I think enhances this report rather than does anything to the detriment, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to accept that friendly amendment.
Right, that's very good. Do we get a seconder to that then? So take that as a seconder, yeah? Okay, so Councillor Jackson was seconding that, so move to the vote.
Mr. Mayor, as there's a consensus between the two groups, I think it's just appropriate we will move to the vote.
Councillor Concord.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I did briefly want to say a couple of words, because we have missed out a few things in here. I agree with the heritage matter, but I think on the environment matter, we talk about the built environment, and we don't talk so much about the natural environment. And I would like to move an amendment that we actually remove the word built. So actually we enhance our environment. So that would include natural and built environment. Because we do need to actually look after not just the physical buildings, but also all the other things in the borough, our trees, our ponds, etc. So I would like to actually move that we remove the word built environment, so it actually covers all the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Concord. Well, that's not final seconder. Councillor Lloyd, you moved to the vote. Does that find a seconder? Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, let's move to the vote then. So, come on, move to the vote on the vote. So let's vote on the vote, please. Against? Right, one against. All four. Right now, vote on the vote. On the amendment. Against? Okay then, brilliant, that's carried. Right, moving swiftly on. Amendments to the Council's procedure rules. A report from the Audit and Standards Committee is at page 77 of the agenda papers. Councillor Tanby, will you move the recommendation set out in the agenda papers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the recommendation to the amendments to the Council procedure rules at Appendix A be approved, and it also recommended to the Council that the Constitution be amended accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Tanby, does that find a seconder?
I second that, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Paltrow. So, okay, so Councillor Evans, you've indicated.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as in these amendments, there's a few good things that are good, but actually the vast majority of this is bad for the council. It would prevent transparency and democracy happening in this place. With regards to the amendment to ban supplementary questions, I think it's a real shame that over recent years Labour mayors have prevented members from being able to ask supplementary questions. And I think one of the reasons why the length of questions, members' questions and public questions as well, have got so long over recent years is because we'll have to ensure that we'll get our points across. And obviously without supplementary questions we can't do that. So that's why questions are so long. I think going to the extent of banning them is quite draconian to some extent. And I made the point as well that even some of the worst run councils in the UK, namely Tower Hamlets, even allow members to ask supplementary questions. That's in their constitution. I did bring a copied page of it to the Audit and Standards Committee, but I accidentally recycled it, so I couldn't bring it to this meeting today. Limiting questions to 3 sentences, again, rather draconian. I don't understand how you can enforce this. I don't believe there's a legal definition of a sentence, so I could just write a whole page of words, put 20 odd semicolons in and say it's a sentence. So I don't know how you can enforce and police that. Banning recorded votes on procedural motions. Well, the LGA definition of a councillor is a councillor's primary role is to represent their ward or division and the people who live within it. As such, I believe the people in my ward have the right to know how I vote on this council. If recorded votes on procedural motions are banned, people will not be able to see how I vote in the minutes of this meeting. They could watch the video, but there's a good chance there'll be technical difficulties with the video. So, I just wanted to put that in there. Obviously, it's being done to save time. Would it save time? Not really, because technically you could have 34 members stand up, make points of orders, and say that they want their vote recorded in the minutes. And if this is pushed through tonight, if there's a procedural motion, I will be doing just that. And I hope the 15 other members on this side of the chamber will do it as well. Banning motions after questions. Well, actually, as we've seen tonight, it benefits both political or pre-political groups in this council. And considering I'm told that it was actually the Councillor Tandy's idea in the first place, I'm surprised that she wants to move this report to take it out. So, whilst there are a few good points in the amendment, on the whole, it's bad. I really cannot vote against it. For it.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very grateful for being called to speak. Well, I would like to echo the words of Councillor Evans has just made, and I think that I'm going to go through a couple of these that I think are absolutely draconian measures that just don't warrant anything in this day and age. I must say one of my big concerns is moving the questions to the end of council without any form of protected time whatsoever, because we've seen many of the councils of late have continued to the full and over the 3-hour time limit in order to see the business done. And I think from memory of the last 5 councils we've had, I think all 3 of them have gone over the time, which would have meant substantially over the time, which would have meant that there was no time for the questions, i.e. they've gone 45 minutes over the 3-hour rule as at present. So I'm very concerned about that. I think members of the public will be very concerned that their elected councillors cannot come here and ask a question of a portfolio holder and hold to account whatever the ruling group is doing, be that currently as it stands, or be that if the tables are overturned someday. This is the reality of these rules, Mr. Mayor. I welcome, Mr. Mayor, the actual addition of 4.13.4 that content must must comply, must follow the item on the agenda. However, we've seen in most recent councils, clearly there is a standard to be applied where one side is clearly given more latency than another, including to members of the public when they're asking their questions. Genuine members of the public told to speak, and yet members of a political party being allowed to just go on about Democrats, it's nothing to do with the particular item. I refer to the Extraordinary Council, sir. So that particularly really does concern me. I also echo the comments of Councillor Evans in relation to recorded votes. I think they're a hugely important procedural tool of this authority, and actually to be able to record a vote and to be able to do so on a procedure motion will allow our members of the public to scrutinise us, and allows them, as we currently do, to scrutinise what we do. It allows them to see very clearly what we stand for or what we do not stand for, what we agree for or what we disagree, and we are putting our name next to exactly that, exactly where we stand. I welcome the additions of 4, 13, 11, which clearly states that in the event that it's tied, or in the event that Mayor is using discretion, that has to be minuted. I'm very grateful to you, Mr. Mayor, for having done most of that this year, following the first couple of councils where a couple of points of order, but actually I think relatively since then it's happened anyway, so I think this is just an adoption of what we've sort of come to do by convention anyway. Mr. Mayor, my biggest concern is clearly to the changes of the points of order. Points of order allow to ensure that infringements of the council's rules and procedures are taken at the time of the infringement, so they can be adjudicated upon and be corrected where necessary. And I think it's really important, and other local authorities across the country do not have or hear points of order at the time at which they're raised, and that includes actually down in the House of Commons as the same points as well. And I think that is a particularly important change to speak against. Further, Mr. Mayor, I also remain concerned about the ability of members to ask questions of the advice being given. I think that is a hugely important point in our democratic right, because nobody has the monopoly on being right all of the time, not even wonderful legal minds such as ours in the corner. But I think it's very important and only right that we as members are here to challenge, opposition to challenge the leadership party, but B, all members, we are here to challenge the work of the council, to ensure that we challenge what decisions are being made, what officer decisions are being made in the best interests of the residents who vote for us. Moving forward, Mr. Mayor, the one point that I really do like, and I'm very glad has been taken on board, is the appointment of substitutes. I think we can all agree some of the committees, particularly I think to planning, that meets I think approximately every 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, is quite an intensive a piece of work and committee to sit on, and I think it's absolutely right that we can try to look for the substitutions in those kind of regulatory committees. As I say, Mr. Mayor, I really have major concerns about the proposals as on the paper this evening. I think what we should do is quite clearly throw them out, look to work again, pick the good stuff, and let's come back with a better idea.
Thank you, Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think anyone in this chamber doubts that there are some elements of this chamber's performance where we can actually improve, and sometimes the heat of the moment, the cut and thrust of debate can overwhelm us sometimes, and there are changes that need to be made to the Constitution. But these changes go way too far. Indeed, in the Constitution Review Working Party, I challenged a number of these issues. There were no votes in the party, and I raised I see Councillor Jackson shaking her head. I quite vividly remember, and I'm sure Councillor Smith can back me up on this because he was there, I challenged not having motions following questions. I find it ironic that you're wanting to abolish those tonight when you've just used two yourself to try and do that. Also, to get rid of the ability to have recorded votes. I tried to mitigate the impact of what you were doing by saying at least the mayor has to record that he has said there is sufficient debate, but that is not anywhere near good enough to actually enable a member of the public to be able to read at a glance how any one of us has voted. Now, in the meeting, we even had one councillor say, what is the point in us debating this, because we have the numbers. It was a Labour councillor, not us. A Labour councillor turned around and said, why are we even debating this issue? We have the numbers, we can push it through, so there's no point having this debate. I then even asked, well, should we not, if you take that line of argument and follow it through to its logical conclusion, I said, well, you should just have the leader of the council rubber stamp every single decision. He said, you move it, I'll propose it. Didn't you, Councillor Longdon? Just goes to show the contempt that some people have. You haven't spoken yet, so you can't move it.
Actually, Chair, I said I would second it if he moved it. Get it right.
You can't move a proposal for a personal explanation if you haven't yet spoken, Councillor Longdon. But that just goes to show the contempt that some members opposite have. They think, because they've controlled this authority for 43 years, they have the absolute God-given right to say how proceedings in this chamber should be conducted, what people should have, what people should think, and just hope they're voted in again every 2 years. That's not good enough. And what members opposite are forgetting is one critical thing. One day, and I hope it's very soon, because we have said in 2020 to the residents, help is on the way, hold on. You guys could be sat right here and you could be subject to exactly the same rules where you can't scrutinise, you can't ask questions, and you can't do your basic job of holding people to account. You should be aware of what you wish for over there on that side of the chamber, because what you are doing is strangling debate. If this was to happen in any other country, Zimbabwe probably has better democratic standards than what we're looking at tonight. And they had Mugabe for, what, 40 years? We had Dennis Harvey for almost 30 years, so I suppose there's not a lot of difference in that. But this proposal undermines the very foundations of our democracy, which is holding those in power to account. The powerless holding those with the power to account. And I cannot support this because you have railroaded this through. You didn't even take votes in the committee. You said you don't care because we've got the numbers anyway, so let's just push it through. That's not democracy, and you deserve to be punished at the ballot box when it comes to it, because you have let down the residents severely, time after time after time. Borough plan, green bins, and now democracy itself in the heart of this chamber. I will not be supporting this, Mr. Mayor, and I call for a recorded vote on this damage to democracy.
I don't know what just happened there, because we've still got some speakers. We're still debating it as far as I know. We're still debating it. Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, I will not resort to personal attacks on individual members, be they sat in this chamber or they be honourable members that have since resigned as councillors from this chamber. I think that is outrageous that the leader of the opposition makes such comments about people who are no longer in this chamber and therefore unable to put their point of view. Mr. Mayor, I note that one of the speakers on the opposite benches tonight has since left the chamber, momentarily I presume, actually is, okay, he's behind me, he was a member of the Constitution Review Working Party and had every opportunity to put all of his concerns to that working party. Mr. Mayor, I'm not critical that he couldn't attend any of the meetings I went to put in person his concerns. I'm not critical of people's non-attendance at meetings, but I just point out that he was unable to attend. Mr. Mayor, just a couple of points in regard to some of the wrong assertions made opposite. All members will be able to ask questions of Cabinet members. And if there is insufficient time to receive a verbal reply, a written response will be given. Exactly what happens now, Mr. Mayor, and indeed will follow from this meeting. Mr. Mayor, points of order. I think it has to be acknowledged that the vast majority of points of order that are made in this council chamber are not valid points of order. We might refer to several made this evening, and in actual fact, I would assert that some of those points of order interrupt democracy because they are stymieing people's abilities to actually address council. Mr. Mayor, substitutes are welcome with appropriate training on regulatory committees. We have not, let's be very clear, we are not in these proposals suggesting the removal of recorded votes on motions. Quite rightly, members of the public deserve to know how I voted in regard to any motion if a recorded vote is called for. That is not... Mr. Mayor, I will continue since there has been some disrespect for the Mayor this evening, and I think it continues, in my opinion. Mr. Mayor, there is no...
Councillor Evans, there is no points of explanation, a personal explanation or anything, until the speaker is finished. Points of order interrupt, but this is not a point of order. So I'll let Councillor Jackson finish, as I would you, and then you can come out with your points of order or your personal explanation or whatever. But that's already in the Constitution. Councillor Jackson, can you continue?
Mr. Mayor, I will repeat, because I think it's really important that residents of this borough know there is no proposal in here to stop recorded votes on motions. Everyone will know how councillors in this chamber vote if a recorded vote is moved on a motion. And Mr. Mayor, I find some of the comments that are being made in here quite strange, considering that at the end of the last Constitution Review Working Party, the chair of that meeting went around all of the members present, as I've said, one member didn't attend, but of all of the members who did attend, and asked them, are you in agreement with this, or words to that effect? Mr. Mayor, a shadow cabinet member, Councillor Smith, was there, and the leader of the opposition, Councillor Wilson. And Mr. Mayor, I don't recall them voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Evans.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that under these amendments on page 94, 4.15.4c, there shall be no recorded vote for any closure motion moved.
Sorry, I thought I caught your eye during Councillor's speech, I didn't jump up, I thought I caught you. For a point of personal explanation, actually, the meeting that Councillor Jackson refers to, which I was able to attend, was cancelled at short notice. I provided that I could not attend the next one and asked for a change of dates. I actually asked for a clarification on the time, and I received no reply to my email request.
Okay, Councillor Condical.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously getting a bit heated, and I would think we should actually take this item off the table, go and work on some of the issues, and come back with a better thing that everyone can agree is a way forward. Because at some point, the sides may swap over, different people may be in power. We need a constitution that's going to last, and actually that people are happy with. So we don't. If we get the constitutional changes wrong, there's going to be more bitterness and more difficult meetings. I go on to the item about questions. I've had the last 3 meetings my question not asked at the meeting. Obviously, I don't like putting my questions in a long way ahead, because if I do so, they can't be topical, and also things can change and they're out of date. But the last 3 meetings, I've not had my question asked. So I think we need to change the constitution, because we've had 3 Labour questions asked tonight, just 1 Conservative question, and no question from myself. If I sat in the audience and asked a question from the public, I would have had an answer tonight, but as a councillor, I don't. So I do think we need to sort out questions. The 3 sentences rule is silly. if you look at today's questions, all these questions could be asked in about 1 minute. I think my question and Mr. Evans, Councillor Evans' questions were the longest, but none of the questions were more than a third of a page. So I think if we are changing the rules of the Constitution, a third of a page is a more sensible rule than actually how many full stops there are. So I agree questions need to be punchy and to the right point. They do need enough of an explanation. And if you look at the questions like mine and Councillor Evans, they're a nice length. There's enough detail in there without being a long statement. And I think if we want to get through our questions, having them short and punchy, and unlike Councillor Beaumont, not reading 4 or 5 minutes worth of legal blurb that we all know, but actually having a punchy answer as well, would actually mean we'll be able to get through 8 questions. 8 questions, 1 minute for question, 2 minutes for answers, would go through in about 24 minutes. So I think we can actually have punchy questions and punchy answers, then we'd have a bit of time for these little mini debates. I think the mini debates are useful, but they shouldn't be used to actually exclude questions. Because in 3 meetings, I've not managed to ask a question. There's a lot more in here that needs to go through. I think the whole thing needs proper review. And the County Council is far better at these debates. They're quite long, but we do a lot of things at the County Council I think we can learn from here. One is about deviation. The main rule that we're putting in here is you can't deviate. So talking about childhood cycling trips or going on the buses, that counts as deviation by some people, not others. I think we need to let people have their 3 minutes, not over-police them, but the one rule that is quite useful is no repetition. So if we've got 16 councillors in a particular bench, we don't say the same thing 6 times. A no repetition rule is far better, and actually don't just duplicate the previous speaker. So we can actually get through the debate, and we've got lots of good speakers here, but they need to make different points. So I think we do need to work on this and get a better constitution. Because if we get it wrong, what we have is we have lots of really bitter meetings. We have people standing up and shouting. We have people trying to say, that's a deviation, that's not a deviation. I think we need to treat people with respect. I think we need to keep the meetings punchy, so that actually they don't go on for 3 or 4 hours. And one other thing I would suggest is we have a separate meeting for setting the budget. Because the absolute killer meeting is the budget meeting. And the County Council has a meeting which is a budget setting meeting. So if we are reviewing this and taking it back for some more work, I think having a budget setting meeting in February and an ordinary council meeting would actually make the whole process a bit more sane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Concourt. Very repetitive, brilliant. So now we've got another 6 speakers, and I'm hoping none of this is going to be repetitive. Councillor Goldberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to highlight a few points that I definitely don't agree with. 4A.8, no ability to ask questions because the meeting will be closed. If you're talking about moving questions to the end, it's easy. It's an easy get out to just close the meeting if there's nobody wants to take it over the 3 hours or we don't have the numbers. 4.9.4, questions can only be 3 lines. 4.10.5, Mayor can shut down questions if they see fit. Removal of motions based on questions asked. No debate of motions from questions, meaning we can only debate what's on the fixed agenda. As we've seen tonight, there is lots more stuff that needs to be brought to this council other than what's on the fixed agenda. The Mayor can stop a member from speaking. This is 4.13.4. Mayor can stop a member from speaking if they see fit, then move the councillor should not be heard further if they upset the Mayor, I'm sure. 4.13.12, points of order. There should be no discussion or challenge to the advice given to the Mayor or the Mayor's decision in a meeting. 4.15.4, there should be no recorded vote for any closure motion moved. 4.19.3, if a member challenges the Mayor in any way the Mayor disagrees with, then the Mayor can move they are not heard. So to put that in layman's terms, so everybody out there in the big wide world that's not used to reading constitutions, limits questions from councillors to 3 sentences. Currently we get 3 minutes per councillor to speak about anything we want during councillors' questions. That's a way for me to bring my representation to this council on behalf of my residents. You're going to put that in 3 sentences. That's not good enough. That's curtailing democracy. Number 2, banning supplementary follow-on questions, not that we ever get them anyway, but to ban them outright, again, democracy, another nail in the coffin. Number 3, banning motions after questions, so basically we can only discuss what, at the moment, you decide to put on the agenda. If it's not important to you, then it doesn't get on. Like the adult changing places motion that I brought forward. It wasn't on the agenda, it's never been on the agenda until I stood up and put a motion